Yo guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the hero Shadow Fox in the Justice League and got Harem Poison Ivy, Part 1. Huge shout out to Shinobi League 13 for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. At one time they had been friends, but like a dream they fell into slumber. One of them, so caught up in his hatred for one man, allowed himself to be seduced by the words of a traitor and betrayed his home for power. The other one, driven by a promise to bring his friend back home to prevent a terrible mistake, became the light so as to guide the other from his hatred. In a place where the land was ripped asunder by a battle fought between the founders of their village, they fought and bled for the first time. The dark powers that were called upon in that battle were such that the land had nearly been torn apart again by the two children's final clash, calling forth a massive explosion, which signified the end of the battle. Even though the boy who tried to save his friend refused to admit it, the friendship they had forged together had ended that day, but he refused to believe it and started a fruitless quest of salvation. For years they trained, one to save his friend, the other to kill the man who had taken everything he held dear. They met again the second time, both more powerful than the last time they had met, and fought again. One fought for his continued vengeance that had turned its sights to the home he had betrayed, and the other one fought to reaffirm his desire to save his friend. The battle was intense, with both warriors calling upon even greater powers than the last time, but once again the battle came to a draw. Now 3 years after the last battle that was held there, the two warriors stood atop the statues of the founders of their home, ready to do battle once more. In the Valley of the End stood two giant statues that faced each other, holding up a hand seal as they stood taller than the waterfall between them. The two statues depicted two middle-aged men who both wore a form of samurai armor. Aside from the armor, all similarities between the two statues ended and both became the total opposite of the other. On the right side stood the statue of the Shodaime Hokage, and the first and last user of the Mokuton bloodline, Hashirama Senju. He was a handsome man with long straight hair, and subtle aged lines, and a stoic look on his face. It was an imposing image that befitted the man he had been when he was alive, and when he had died fighting for his village. On the left stood the founder of the Uchiha clan, and the first recipient of the Mangekyo Sharingan, and the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Madara Uchiha. He too was a handsome man, but in a slightly more feral way than his stone counterpart, with his long spiky hair, smooth face, and his own stoic look as well. His image was intimidating, which also befitted the man he was alive, but unlike the Senju, he died betraying the village that he helped to create. On top of the statues of the two founders of Konohagakure no Sato stood two men. Both had the air of hardened war veterans who had taken up their weapons again just to face down their last enemy. These two men who stood on top of the co-founders of their village were none other than Sasuke Uchiha, the last true Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the Yondaime Hokage and the last true heir to the Uzumaki. Sasuke, who stood on top of the statue of Madara Uchiha, had not changed much since his and Naruto's last battle. He still wore his black umbu-pants and robe-like top, which had the Uchiha's red and white fan symbol printed on the back, with a purple rope wrapped around his waist and tied into a bow to act as a belt. On his waist he carried a chokuto in its black and white sheath, and on his left wrist he wore a storage seal that carried the rest of his ninja supplies. The only real difference about him was that his hair was shoulder length and in a ponytail to keep it from flying around in battle. Naruto stood on top of Hashirama Senju had a more drastic change than his former ally that stood across from him. His hair was still golden blonde and spiky, but now had two bangs that fell past his tilted Hittite and framed his face, and his only visible eye was still a deep pure blue, and his right eye being covered by his Hittite, similar to the way his sensei, Kakashi, used to cover his Sharingan. Instead of a black and orange jumpsuit, he now wore a customized black and white skin-tight body armor that was normally worn by Umbu operatives, a red coat with black flames sewn into the hem and a white spot on the back with the Uzumaki spiral clan symbol, and hanging around his neck was a long, decorative orange scarf that was wrapped around twice so that it could cover his lower face. On his back, the black handle of a katana could be seen before it disappeared into his red coat, and within the coat there were hundreds of storage seals which held all of his ninja supplies. On his right leg there was a holster that held his kunai, held there by bandages as the only form of weaponry or supplies, except the katana, that was not sealed into the coat. But the biggest change of all was his eye. Instead of the warm eyes that were pleading for his friend come home and forget his hatred, these eyes were cold and unyielding, eyes that had seen death and accepted it. These were the eyes of a killer, not a savior. Here we are again, Dobe. Things have changed over the years, yet we still meet here. But this time we aren't stopping until there's only one of us left standing, Sasuke said to Naruto from across. Naruto, next time, kill him, Naruto heard in his head. These were the last words said to him from his dead teammate, Sakura, right before she died from the wound that was unmistakably received by a Chidori. Yeah, only one of us will walk away from this alive, team, Naruto said in response to Sasuke's statement. What? No begging me to come home, or telling me to let go of my hatred for the place that destroyed my clan? Sasuke asked. In response to his query, Sasuke felt a spike in killing intent that emanated from Naruto, and in response started to see images of Naruto killing him in vicious and brutal ways, not unlike what Orochimaru did years ago in the Forest of Death during the Chunin exams. For all the years that I've been looking for you, it wasn't until 2 years ago that I realized you weren't worth it, Naruto said in response to Sasuke's query, but at the sight of Sasuke's confused expression, Naruto realized that Sasuke didn't remember. You don't remember, do you? Well, 2 years ago you stuck a Chidori through Sakura, a girl who truly loved you, and left her to die. When he was told this, Sasuke shrugged off the killing intent that was rolling off of Naruto, and started laughing. So you're here to get revenge for the useless girl who you had a crush on for years. That's truly pathetic, Dobe, Sasuke taunted Naruto. Naruto grit his teeth together so as to keep himself from charging Sasuke in a blind rage, and wiped that insane superior smirk off his face then and there. No, her death was the one that showed me that the only true way to save you was for me to end your miserable life and move on with my own. I was over my crush on her, by the way. This is more akin to a brother avenging the death of a little sister, Naruto told him while reaching into his coat slowly so as not to draw attention to it. It's because of her death that I won't show you any more mercy, so goodbye, Naruto said before he suddenly hurled a handful of shuriken at Sasuke. Sasuke saw this and dodged by jumping off of the statue of Madara, towards the waters below. Naruto predicted that this would happen and reached into his coat again, unsealed more shuriken, and proceeded to throw them at the still airborne Sasuke before jumping himself. The shuriken hit Sasuke, but there was a puff of smoke, and instead of Sasuke being impaled by multiple shuriken, there was only a rock. Damn it, Kawarimi, Naruto said. He landed on the water and looked around for his missing enemy before he heard Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Fireball Jutsu, and jumped away from the massive fireball that was flying to where he had landed and found Sasuke with his Sharingan activated. They stared each other down for a moment, waiting for what would happen next, before they charged each other, drawing their swords, both moving at unbelievable speeds. Without saying a word or making a hand seal, Naruto created a shadow clone right before he and Sasuke clashed and had it dive low in front of him. Naruto then jumped onto the back of the clone and used it as a springboard and jumped over Sasuke, flipping over right behind Sasuke and slashing at Sasuke's back only for Sasuke to turn around and parry the strike at the last second. From there it became an intense kenjutsu battle, and both were struggling against each other, for whenever one of them gained the advantage it would almost instantly be taken away by the other and vice versa. Naruto eventually overextended on one of his strikes, and Sasuke took advantage of the deadly mistake by stabbing Naruto through the heart with his chokuto. Only for the Naruto he stabbed to explode into a puff of smoke before he heard Naruto say, "Futon, Shikujayaku, Wind Release, Vacuum Sphere," and spun around just in time to see Naruto suck in a deep breath and spit out a barrage of high-speed bullets made out of wind. Jumping out of the way, he landed on the cliff face of the valley and stuck to it with his chakra. He took a breath to steady himself and thought, who would have thought the dobe would be this much trouble for an elite? But that proved to be a mistake, as he was instantly surrounded by several kunai. Sasuke almost blew them off as poorly aimed, but he noticed, to his horror, that each and every kunai had an explosive tag wrapped around the handle, and turned towards Naruto, who held his hands in the snake hand seal. Before Sasuke could do anything, Naruto said the word that spelled his demise. Boom! And with that the tags exploded. Naruto waited for any sign that Sasuke had survived, and he didn't have to wait long, for out of the smoke came a barrage of shuriken. Naruto dodged the instruments of death, only for the shuriken to curve around him and wrap him up tightly so that he couldn't move. When that was done, Naruto saw the smoke clear and saw Sasuke standing there with the wires that were attached to the shuriken in his hand with that damn superior smirk on his face. Whoops, almost forgot about that one, Naruto said, kicking himself for falling for such a simple trick. As good as you are, dope, you still can't stand up to an elite like myself, so sorry to say, but this is goodbye, Sasuke said, and then put all the wires into his mouth, starting up a sequence of hand seals before declaring his jutsu. Katan, Ryuken no Jutsu, Fire Release, Dragon Fire Jutsu. After which the wires he was holding in his mouth caught on fire, and the flames started to travel down the wires towards Naruto. The flames reached a struggling Naruto, who was then engulfed in an intense inferno. The fires from the attack raged for almost 30 seconds before they finally died down so Sasuke could appreciate his work, only for there to be nothing. There should have at least been ashes, but there was nothing. Sasuke started to look for Naruto and turned just in time to receive a knee to the face. Sasuke was too stunned to do anything to retaliate. Naruto landed in a crouch before springing back into the air to perform a mid-air spinning kick and declaring his attack. Konoha Senpu, Leaf Whirlwind, and sending Sasuke flying into one of the walls of the valley. Sasuke dug himself out of the cracked wall where he had been launched into. He was barely able to stand when he was forced to duck under the blade of a Fuma shuriken that stuck into the wall. Looking at it, he then whirled around to see Naruto looking at him with his own superior smirk, albeit not insanely. What were you saying about being an elite, Sasuke-chan? Naruto said in a taunting voice. This riled Sasuke up badly as he was forced to make an assessment of the situation. Unlike their previous battles where they had taken about equal amounts of damage, and Sasuke had become blind because of his overuse of his Mangekyo Sharingan the last time they fought each other, this time he had barely done any damage to Naruto, and he was left with a busted lip and possibly broken nose. It was really starting to piss the last Uchiha off. Damn you, dope, damn you, were Sasuke's thoughts as he stared at the superior smirk on Naruto's face that was really pushing Sasuke to the edge. How dare this dead last dope look down on him? He was an Uchiha, an elite, he was supposed to be invincible. However, arrogance could not be translated into skill. Damn you, dope, Sasuke said as went through a familiar set of hand seals to the blonde and called out his attack. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Fireball Jutsu, and sent another massive fireball towards Naruto. If he had not been so caught up in his own arrogance, he would have seen Naruto going through a brief set of hand seals and not moving to dodge the attack. Then, right after the Uchiha launched his attack, he suddenly felt disoriented and heard Naruto cry out, Futon de Tapa, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough. And he was left wondering why the dobe would launch an attack that would only enhance his own. Was he crazy? Sasuke then looked up to see two Narutos who were standing near the wall that he was standing by only a second ago. He then realized what had happened. The shuriken that he had dodged had actually been a hinged shadow clone that had lain in wait until the real Naruto had substituted himself with Sasuke to take his own attack. Only to add insult to injury, the clone then launched a wind jutsu to enhance the fireball, turning it blue, that was coming faster than Sasuke could move, so Sasuke had no chance in hell to dodge the attack. All this went through Sasuke's head before he was engulfed by his own fireball, which then proceeded to explode. After the fires had settled, there was nothing to but smoke and ash, but then Sasuke flew out of the smoke covered in first-degree burns. Damn you, dobe, how? How did you become so powerful? Last time we were evenly matched, but now you're more powerful than ever. What changed that made you more powerful than before? Sasuke demanded, unable to comprehend how Naruto was able to completely outmaneuver him on whatever he did. It was infuriating to his ego. Naruto looked coldly upon Sasuke before answering. I've always been this strong. Whenever we battled I would hold back so as not to hurt you, but now the gloves come off. You killed one of my precious people and that is unforgivable, so I will kill you so that I don't lose any more to you, he told Sasuke, And when he said that something in Sasuke had broken. The dobe, the dead last in the academy, had always been this strong? He had held back just to uphold a promise to some useless girl he had a crush on. Even if he said that, now that Sasuke looked back on the fight, he could now tell that Naruto was still holding back, and that thought was truly terrifying to the last Uchiha. But his pride overrided his sense of self-preservation that was telling him to run, and screamed, "You damn dope!" before weaving through 3 short hand seals, and crouching down, gripping his right arm with his left, and gathering lightning chakra into his hand, with the sound of birds chirping from the electrified hand. Naruto, however, did not focus on the lightning in his former teammate's hands and said, "Find another insult, you're like a misprinted copy of Ika Ika," which only served to enrage Sasuke further, causing him to charge blindly at Naruto. Seeing Sasuke charge him, Naruto sighed. This was starting to get boring. At first, playing with Sasuke had been fun, but now it was just downright humiliating. Deciding to get just a little serious, Naruto formed a Rasengan, spiraling sphere, one-handed, and charged as well. Sasuke, seeing this, charged even faster than before, expecting a clash like the last time, hoping to display his superiority. Instead of a clash like before, just when the 2 shinobi were about to meet in the middle, Sasuke thrust out his lightning-encased hand only for Naruto to duck under it, and thrust his own attack into Sasuke's torso. "Rasengan, spiraling spear!" he cried out, as Sasuke felt the attack grinding into his body and did the only thing he could do. He screamed in pure agony before Naruto's attack expanded itself and exploded, launching him away. Sasuke was sent back spinning at a high speed before he impacted another part of the valley and falling into the water below. When he lifted himself up, he looked very much worse for wear. His clothes were pretty much destroyed, with only his pants, rope belt, and the sleeve and collar of his top left over, which was soot-stained from the wind-enhanced fireball he had been hit with. On his chest was a prominent spiral burn where the Rasengan had impacted, and blood was running down from his mouth. His chokuto had long since been lost, and the seal he carried that had his ninja supplies had been incinerated by his own attack. In other words, he looked like hell, and he was screwed. "I'm disappointed, Sasuke. I expected more than this from the revered and elite Uchiha. What happened to all that confidence you had earlier? Because right now all I'm seeing is a pathetic and childish excuse of a shinobi," he said mockingly. That was a low blow to Sasuke, because ever since childhood he had been praised as a genius in the shinobi arts. But now, years later, to have someone he considered being inferior to him insult his skill and prowess was nothing less than a kick to the nuts. So in response to the insult, he activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and spoke the one word that spelled the demise of anyone who looked him in the eye. "Tsukuyami." Only for it to not work. "What the? Tsukuyami?" He tried again, only for it to fail once more. "Wondering why your little piece of hell won't work, Sasuke-chan?" Naruto asked the perplexed Uchiha, who was so confused he didn't notice that he nodded. "Well, you see, after you killed Sakura, I asked Hokage-sama for the key to the Uchiha library so that I could study the weaknesses of the Sharingan. He immediately refused. However, he accidentally dropped the key, which I proceeded to take. I spent several nights looking through your library until I came across a secret compartment that held a book that made a reference to your evil eye right there. In that book I found the only significant weakness of your little genjutsu. It requires direct eye contact with both eyes," Naruto finished. "And in case you're wondering, I still have my eye, so I didn't do anything wasteful like cut it out just to take care of your little mind-rape toy. You're not worth it," he finished. Sasuke stood in shocked silence until, "Damn you, Dobe, how dare you think you're better than me, an Uchiha of the invincible Uchiha clan?" Sasuke raged as anger reached the boiling point. "Fine, I'll just destroy you and prove how superior to you that I am. Susanoo!" he cried before he was shrouded by a cold energy that just seemed to suck the warmth out of the air. The energy started to take shape, forming an ancient shrouded warrior carrying what looked like an energy sword and a shield that seemed like it could double as a crossbow. "Now die, Dobe!" Sasuke screamed, and the ancient warrior shroud swung its sword at Naruto, who jumped out of the way and landed out of the sword's range, only to have to move immediately afterward because the shield did double as a crossbow and launched bolts of black fire at him. He kept this dance up for a while, but despite his aloof attitude, he was actually very nervous. Sasuke had the upper hand now, and that was never a good thing. Naruto was then hit with a surge of inspiration before he turned tail and ran away from Sasuke. Sasuke, who was surprised by this action, smiled maniacally, thinking that the dobe was trying to escape from his vast power, and only launched more black fire at the retreating blonde. He never noticed a large chakra spike from Naruto, now using chakra to run up the wall, whom had slipped into sage mode, his eyelids now a bright orange and his eyes yellow with a bar-like pupil to signify his transition. With a combination of chakra enhancement and raw power, Naruto launched himself into the air, where he created a Raisin Shuriken without clone assistance and threw it at Sasuke, calling out, Senjutsu Futon Raisin Shuriken, Sage Art, Wind Release, Spiraling Shuriken. The flying Rasengan variation flew towards the shrouded Uchiha, only for him to bring up his crossbow/shield to hold it back. The two forces struggled against each other briefly, but the Uchiha was able to repel the attack and launched it away from him clear across the valley, where it exploded against the statue of Madara Uchiha in a massive burst of millions of wind blades. Sasuke turned away from the failed attack to see Naruto still in the air, only something was wrong. Naruto was up in the air above him, covered in a golden flame-like chakra with seals covering his body and a similar seal-covered trench coat, and he seemed to be charging up a massive attack. It had all been a distraction. Naruto had launched the Raisin Shuriken at him, hoping that he would block. That would allow him proper time to change into his Kyuubi chakra shroud and charge up the only attack he knew that had any hope of taking down the deranged Sasuke. The Baijidama. Sasuke, not one to be outdone, charged up his crossbow/shield with as many black flames as he possibly could, and aimed his charged-up weapon at Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto finished charging up his attack and transformed into his full nine-tailed state, and swallowed the black orb of compressed chakra, the ground collapsing beneath him as he prepared to launch his most powerful attack. Drop dead! Sasuke yelled at the top of his lungs as he launched his Amaterasu bolt at the image of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Baijidama, Tailed Beast Ball! The nine-tailed Naruto cried as he launched the infamous power of the Biju. The two attacks collided against each other, each one vying for dominance. However, both were totally equal to each other. The attacks were so powerful that they caused a massive shockwave to tear through the area and cause a small earthquake. However, both attacks took their toll on the users, and it was now a battle of wills. What neither of the two warriors noticed was that a large crack appeared in midair right above where the two attacks collided. Naruto reverted to his human form but continued to use the Baijidama, and Sasuke lost the Susanoo and was unable to continue his attack, which led to his last sight being him looking on in horror as Naruto's attack obliterated him. The last Uchiha had fallen. For once Naruto had done what was right for him to save his friend from the darkness and his own hatred, kill him. It was then that Naruto noticed the crack in the air and studied it warily. He knew from experience that whenever something like a crack or hole appeared in midair, it never ended well. That was his experience when he battled Kyuubi for control over its power. Well, that was in an interdimensional space created so that a Biju could do battle against its container for absolute control. So maybe the ominous hole that was starting to suck him in would be different. Wait, suck? Naruto then noticed that the crack was starting to suck him in, so he started to struggle, but the combination of exhaustion from overusing the Baijidama and the sheer force that the hole was pulling him with made the struggle futile. Before long, he was pulled into the inky blackness that lay within the crack and within moments passed out from exhaustion. After he disappeared into the crack, it faded from existence, as if it had never been there at all. In an unknown location, crack appeared within an alley. It came so suddenly that it roused a homeless man who had decided to spend the cool night wrapped up in a tattered and scared him off. After a few moments, the crack started to morph, and something fell out, and the crack was gone. The thing that had fallen out of the hole was a man with blonde hair and black and white skin-tight armor, a tattered red coat, and a ragged orange scarf. He also carried a sword on his back, and a strange bandage-like material held several small knives around his thigh, and on his head was a damaged headband with a spiral leaf insignia. In the alley laid out and exhausted, he would lay and wake up to a grand, new destiny. He had no idea of the lives he would touch, the friends he would make, or the love that he would earn. For now he would sleep, and wake up to a new day, with his new life ahead of him. Outside the entrance of the alley there was a sign that could be seen from there. The sign read, "Welcome to Las Vegas, Nevada." In the universe, there are many truths. One of those truths is that there is actual magic, and another is that in any universe, Lex Luthor is an obsessive, evil, arch-bastard. However, in all universes, a truly terrifying sight is that of a cranky, sleep-deprived female, even more so when said female is a magician with actual magical power. That female magician just happened to be in Vegas for a show at an all-night club, and her name is Zatanna, or Z if you prefer. Now, when a magician performs at an all-night club in Vegas, they would usually sleep for the entire day, and she failed to because of a completely random set of events that were out of her control and could have obviously been avoided if she had just used her powers to fly to Sin City. Her mistake: she decided to fly on commercial airlines instead of first class or using flight to get there because she didn't feel like it. Because of that, she was kept up all day by an obnoxious little brat who didn't want to sleep, whose mother let him push her around and wouldn't discipline him. Upon arrival to Vegas, she figured she'd be able to catch up on her sleep at her hotel, but it was not to be. Terrorists, for some reason, decided to target the airport she arrived at, which forced her to take them down before any civilian casualties could occur. Thankfully, she wasn't one of the more well-known heroes, or else she would have been bombarded by raving hero fans for an autograph like Superman or The Flash. Instead, she was subjected to several hours of interrogation from incompetent law enforcement who thought she may have been a villain who got annoyed at her compatriots and decided to take them down out of irritation. The Justice League was able to call in and straighten out the whole situation, and the cops let her go. By then, it was too late. She had 30 minutes before her show, and would have to perform without a good amount of sleep. She used her power to teleport to the back entrance of the club she was to perform at, and went into her dressing room to change, magically, into her stage and superhero costume of a low-cut blouse that showed a healthy amount of cleavage, lion tamer's coat, high-cut tights, thigh-high transparent stockings, and a top hat. After changing, she proceeded to give the club the best magic show they had ever seen. Thank God she had actual magic instead of the mundane, everyday magic other magicians used. After the show was over, it was nearly dawn, and she was running on empty and getting cranky. Her mood did not improve when one of the sleazy patrons of the club tried to cop a feel on her ass as she was walking back to her dressing room through the crowd. It took all of her willpower to not say, "Castrate him!" backwards, and instead of just that awful man, the unspecified order would castrate any man around her. It was times like those that really hated being a noble hero, but at the end of the day it was worth it. At least that's what heroes told themselves. So she just settled for delivering a magically enhanced kick to his family jewels, which was also a reason she enjoyed having actual magic. After giving the pervert his just desserts, she headed back to her dressing room where she set a reservation for a nice hotel so she could catch up on the sleep she lost. She teleported to the hotel, after forwarding her credit card number, and paid for the room, where she proceeded to take a shower before going to bed. Her luck was not that good, because when she was about to lay her head on the pillow there was a golden flash in her room which roused her back into accursed awareness. Now standing in her room was a tall man in a form-fitting blue outfit, golden face mask, gold gauntlets, boots, and cape was none other than Dr. Fate, the Lord of Order in this universe. What is he doing here? Zatanna thought, praying to any deity that existed in the universe that he was here on a social call and not here to request a favor. "Zatanna, I require your assistance," he said in a wise voice that only came with years of experience. "I require your assistance, aka I need a favor." And when Dr. Fate needed a favor, you couldn't refuse him, because it might result in the end of the world as we know it. How did she know? Well, the last time she turned down an interdimensional entity's request for help, it nearly resulted in the apocalypse. Zatanna groaned, wondering why she couldn't catch a break in the last 24 hours. Changing her clothes magically, she idly wondered what the penalty for attempting to slaughter the Lord of Order would be, but she put those sleep-deprived, sadistic thoughts aside for now. "Yes, doctor, what do you need?" she asked in a tired voice. "You should really sleep more, Zatanna," he told her in a matter-of-fact voice. I was about to, she thought. But right now I would like for you to check on something near your current location, he said. About half an hour ago there was a disturbance within the dimensional rift. I checked it over and it seems that there was a rip that has since repaired itself, but not until after dropping something off before it closed. He finished. Interesting, Zatanna mumbled. But why do you need me to check it out? It's not like we don't have our own share of interdimensional visitors, like Karen or Raven, she told him, thinking of the two beings. Indeed, you are correct, Zatanna, but this being has a similar feeling to Trigon, he said, which shocked Zatanna. Just thinking of that being sent shivers up her spine because of all the destruction he had caused, but what scared her was that there was a similar being to Trigon that was in their dimension now. One was bad enough, but now that there were two, she was terrified to even think of it. They had barely fought off Trigon when he tried to get into their dimension the last time. So, you want me to scout it out in case it's a threat? She stuttered out. Yes, I would do it myself, but I am currently engaged at the moment, Dr. Fate told her. However, it may not turn out to be a threat. It's not as malicious as Trigon, or even Raven, just merely as powerful. Though that did calm down Zatanna a bit, she was still a bit nervous because there was another being that was just as powerful as the most malicious entity in the universe. Hopefully, it wasn't confrontational. She didn't know how well she would be able to handle it. Thanks for the info. Now if you can tell me where I can find it, I'll be on my way, Zatanna said. The being is 2 blocks to the west of your current location, in an alley. Thank you for your assistance, Zatanna, Dr. Fate said before disappearing in another burst of gold light. Zatanna sighed. Well, I'd better get moving so I can get some sleep, she said to herself before walking outside, onto her balcony, and flying off. Naruto lay in the alley where he had been dropped by the crack for almost an hour, but when the rising sun shined on his face through the alley's opening he was forced to wake up. Deep blue eyes opened only to quickly shut again as the harsh rays of the sun glared into them before the body they belonged to groaned, and he forced himself into a sitting position against the wall of the building. He opened his eyes once more to take a look around, obviously avoiding looking at the sun and get his bearings straight. With a simple once-over, he discerned the obvious. He definitely wasn't in the Valley of the End, and there was no crack anywhere around him except on the buildings he was surrounded by. What the hell had happened to him after he had killed Sasuke? The last thing he remembered was being too exhausted to move, and being sucked into the crack before blacking out. Because of the situation he was in at the moment, he spent the moment to reflect on past experience. I knew it, I freaking knew it! It's never a good thing when a hole appears out of nowhere, and just hangs in the air. I swear to Cammy if I ever meet Murphy, I will kick his ass for making that stupid, thrice-damned law, he ranted to himself. If anyone had passed the alley at that moment, they would have been presented to a ragged blonde guy talking to himself in Japanese and sent him on a one-way train ride to the loony bin. Luckily for Naruto, nobody passed by. But that didn't mean Murphy's law wasn't in effect. His ranting continued for a few more minutes before he stopped ranting and just sat still. It was a few more minutes before he heard the one voice he wasn't imagining ask, "Are you finally done? You disturbed a really great nap." He had been wondering when the demonic presence in his gut would start talking again. "Screw you. Go chase a rabbit or something, I'm in distress here," Naruto told the Kyuubi no Kitsune which had been sealed in him since the day he was born. He just forgot one little thing about the fox. "Why, Naruto-kun, I would love that. That's just what I need to relieve me of all the stress that's built up over the years, a good old-fashioned romp. It's really been too long since I've been with a man." "Thanks for the offer," the Kyuubi teased him. "Oh right. Sorry. I forgot for a moment, you're a woman," Naruto apologized. "That's right folks, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, strongest of the Biju, is a woman," she had told Naruto after the battle with the Jubi had ended. Safe to say, every kunoichi that Naruto had told afterward had had a field day, and every male within Konoha had taken a massive blow to their pride, based on the fact that it had always been assumed that the Kyuubi was male. And don't forget it. By the way, can you use shadow clones to bypass the seal again? It's been a while since I was able to stretch my legs," she inquired. Checking his internal stores of chakra, Naruto came to his conclusion. "Sorry Kurama, I've got a mild case of chakra exhaustion, and even if I use the emergency seal, I'd only have enough for wall and free running. After I've regained my chakra, I'll let you out." "Okay," he thought to her. "Okay," she answered him. Naruto raised the right sleeve of his coat to reveal a sealing tattoo on his arm. It was designed to take a small amount of chakra and keep it as an emergency store in case Naruto found himself alone and in need of an added boost. Naruto had designed it shortly after the war was over, having taken an interest in seals after his teacher passed away, and it was what his newly discovered father had been famous for. He had created many seals and even recreated the Harem, Flying Thunder God, with the help of clones. It had been requested by Kakashi, the newly instated Nandame Hokage, that the emergency seal be printed onto every ninja in the village, to which Naruto agreed. Naturally, after activating the seal, Naruto felt less like shit and more like a shinobi. With his stores partially replenished, Naruto stood up and, focusing chakra into his feet, ran up the building to get the lay of the land. Reaching the top of the building, Naruto was taken completely by surprise when he found himself in a place full of the tallest buildings he had ever seen. Some were moderately high, but then there were others that were bigger than even the council building in Tetsu no Kuni, Land of Iron, where the 5 Kage Summit had been held. The surprising thing about this place wasn't the size of the buildings though, it was how large the city, and he was pretty sure it was a city, was. It was at least as large as any of the 5 great shinobi villages alone, and filled with buildings that were, at least, no smaller than the Kage mansions back home. "Wow," Naruto said as he stared out at the city. "You can say that again." Kurama affirmed her host's eloquent choice of words. She was speechless as well, and that was saying something. Being several millennia old, she thought she had seen everything the world had to offer, but this took her off her high horse, because she was in the same boat as her container. Looking past the tall buildings, Naruto looked at the environment that the city had been built in, and his assessment could be summarized in one word: dry. He would have compared it to the deserts of Kaze no Kuni, Land of Wind, but it had plants that, as sparse as they were still there, and there were large rocks all over the desert along with large mountains in the distance. He settled for saying that it was some strange mixture between the deserts of Kaze no Kuni, Land of Wind, and the mountain valleys of Tsuchi no Kuni, Land of Earth. Tearing his eyes away from the landscape and looked towards the ground in the city. Instead of beaten dirt paths for roads, he found something that was similar to the cobblestone paths that were not uncommon in Yuki no Kuni, Land of Snow, better known as Harem no Kuni, Land of Spring, but smoother. Instead of people or carriages, however, there were metal contraptions that looked similar to the vehicles that Koiki had shown him on his last trip to his friend's country. She had said that farther along the line that the developers predicted the vehicles would get smaller, faster, and more powerful in the future. That must have been what the contraptions on the ground were. To the sides of the paved roads, there were people walking all over the place and into buildings that he swore were some kind of casinos. He made a mental note to visit those later to see if he was right and possibly make some money, and into other places that seemed like hotels. Looking around, he spotted an alley next to one of the masses of people, so he decided to jump across the buildings until he got to it and dropped down. Keeping to the shadows that were produced from the angle of the rising sun, and listened in on some of the conversations of the people that passed by. Listening in, he found that the language the people were speaking was similar to that of a trading partner that Konoha gained after the war had ended. In order to better trading relations, it had been mandatory that academy students, an active ninja, learn the language so that no mistakes were made when the supply came in and there was more or less than there was supposed to be. While he listened to the people chatter, he found out that they were tourists, whatever those were, and he was in a place that was nicknamed Sin City. Come to think of it, didn't Tanzaku Town have a similar nickname? Where was he? 5 minutes after Naruto had left the alley to explore the city, Zatanna arrived. She expected to find a lot of things when she found the entity that fate had told her about, but taking a look around she found only an empty alley. She sensed some form of residual energy that she had never felt before, and mixed in with that energy was some kind of demonic presence. Whatever this being was, she now understood why fate had wanted her to find it. If someone like Morgan Le Fay got her hands on this thing, they'd be in trouble. She began feeling out for the creature's power, and was surprised when she felt that power going straight up a wall. Flying up, she felt around and continued to follow the power that had left in the direction of the Vegas Strip. Sighing to herself, she flew off. "Sometimes I really hate my job," she commented to herself as she followed in the footsteps the creature she was chasing, as it seemed to have jumped from building to building. As she followed the scent in a way, she happened to look down and saw something that appealed to her sleep-deprived mind, and if she weren't so tired it would probably appeal to her even more. Coming out of an alleyway was a young man, maybe a couple of years younger than herself. He had blonde hair with bangs that framed his face and blue eyes with 6 strange lines that looked reminiscent to whiskers, 3 on each side of his face, and was perfectly tanned. His body, while not bulky like Superman and was also not scrawny like the Flash, seemed to be built for hard work and speed, and was covered by jeans and a white t-shirt with an orange spiral with a triangle that looked kind of like a leaf. He carried a backpack suited for hiking. She briefly wondered if he was lost and had wandered into town, but those thoughts were for another time. Sadly, she couldn't just float down, switch clothes, and ask his name and possibly for a date, because of the favor to Dr. Fate. Plus, he was one out of a sea of faces here in Vegas. She would most likely never see him again. But for now she had a job to do. Still following the scent, she couldn't help but think about the man she had seen. She didn't know what it was about him, but without doubt he had been one of the most attractive men she had ever seen. She didn't know why, but she had felt an urge when she saw him, to just fly over, pluck him up, and fly right back to her hotel and set up a spell so as to avoid any unwanted interruptions, so that she would be able to come out satisfied and be damned of that favor. Zatanna was no stranger to the pleasures of the flesh, but it was the first time she had felt desire spring up on her like that. She continued on with her search and finally came down into another alley where some of the energy she had been tracking suddenly coalesced, like its use had been needed for some unknown task before it left the alley. Changing her clothes and hair color magically, she walked out into the crowd the energy led to, and from there it just disappeared. That was strange. No energy she had tracked before had just up and vanished, but it didn't matter. She had lost her target, and now she had to tell Dr. Fate. Ha! This should be fun, she said to herself before slipping into another alley, changing out of her civilian clothes and into her costume and flying back to the hotel where she would hopefully soon be subjected to blissful unawareness. Arriving back onto the hotel balcony of her hotel, she entered her room when there was a sudden burst of gold light which signified the entrance of the very familiar Lord of Order. "Zatanna, you're back. Has the being been found?" Dr. Fate asked her. "Unfortunately not, Doctor. I tracked it to an alley near the Vegas Strip, but it suddenly disappeared when I followed it into a crowd," she reported to Fate. "I have a show this afternoon, so after I'm done I'll spend the night looking." "Very well, thank you, Zatanna," he said before he left with his usual flashy exit, without waiting for a reply. Always a pleasure, Doctor, Zatanna thought before changing into her nightclothes and slipped into the confines of her bed. Now she could slip into the land of dreams, and hopefully meet that blonde-haired, blue-eyed god. Wait, where did that come from? Okay, she really didn't need this right now. What was her problem anyway? Oh wait, she knew she needed to get laid. But hopefully by a certain blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. Okay, seriously, she needed to sleep, and the last thing that was going to help her with that endeavor was being all hot and bothered. "Achoo!" was the sound from the blonde ninja who was currently walking through the city in his civvies, as he liked to call them. Wiping his nose, he asked, "Why do I feel like saying something Erosen would write about now?" "Probably because some smokin' hot woman is having very explicit dreams about you," Kurama replied, going with something that would make Jiraiya of the Sannin proud. If only she knew how right she was. "Ha! Yeah, right. It's 10 in the morning. Everyone who's old enough to have those dreams is awake. Who sleeps this late?" he responded to Kurama. "Besides, I haven't let any woman that we've passed get a good look at me since we walked out of that alley. Whoever said genjutsu was useless can suck it. You can only use genjutsu because of those seals you tattooed onto your body, or the detection seals, so you don't get caught in one either," Kurama pointed out to her host. "Well, excuse me for not wanting a repeat of the Itachi incident after the war ended. Why I didn't get into Fuinjutsu until after the war I have no idea. It's taken care of a lot of problems. I've ended up creating seals that could benefit the village if mass-produced," recreated the Harem, and currently have a few projects that I came up with in progress. Naruto berated himself for that oversight. He could have saved more people during the battle with the Jubi, but it wasn't doing him any good to dwell on the past or the friends that he lost. You're right. The seals you created are useful, especially when you let me test them out. Speaking of which, are the gloves almost done? Kurama inquired. Done and waiting for a test drive, Naruto told her. Wait, what were we talking about? I don't know, Kurama responded. But I think that maybe we should find a way to make some kind of money. Yeah, but Naruto started only to be cut off by a loud bang that seemed to come from a big building from across the road where there seemed to be several men wearing black masks over their faces and storming into the building waving around black pieces of metal that everyone seemed to be afraid of for some reason. The reason the people were scared became obvious when one of the men decided to warn people from running and fired at someone close to the wall, barely missing them, and the wall seemed to explode when a small, fast-moving object impacted against it. Within 5 minutes the building was surrounded by several of the vehicles Naruto had speculated on earlier, all with red and blue lights flashing indicating that it was an emergency. From what Naruto could tell, the responders to the emergency were trying to negotiate with the men holding the hostages in the building. It seemed like they could use some help. Good thing he applied those reparation seals on his clothes and armor. Slipping into an alley, Naruto unsealed his gear and a smoke bomb. Throwing the bomb to the ground, he quickly changed into his armor, coat, scarf, and weapons for everyone to see after the smoke cleared, and after checking his chakra stores, he concluded that he had enough to perform a few mid-level jutsu, which would be enough if what he had planned out worked. Running to the top of the building he was near, Naruto studied the building, which he guessed to be some kind of bank, where the hostages were being held. There were more than 5 armed goons in the building but less than 10, with over 30 hostages on the ground floor. The building was 2 stories tall, with the first floor being larger than the second to house the atrium where the hostages were being kept. Getting everything he needed from his vantage point, he jumped across the street to the building across from him. Landing in a crouch, he stood and walked over to a door that was placed on the roof and checked it. It was locked. Thanking Kami for his training in his second affinity, he loaded one of his fingers up with lightning chakra and poked the keyhole in the door, which resulted in a clicking sound, signifying that the door was unlocked. Opening the door, he put his fingers in a cross shape and said, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu, creating 3 solid copies of himself. Looking at the clones, he told them, You know what to do, to which they nodded before transforming into 3 mice and scurrying off. Moving down the stairwell, Naruto cast a low-level genjutsu that would mask most of his movements. Normally he wouldn't waste his time with it, seeing as most experienced, or sometimes inexperienced, shinobi would be able to sense him out, but these men weren't shinobi, so there was hardly any need for caution. Heck, if it weren't for the hostages, he wouldn't have even bothered with the genjutsu in the first place. Upon reaching the landing to the ground floor, Naruto found one of the thugs. He was of average height and build, and that was almost all that Naruto could discern aside from the fact that he seemed twitchy. Sneaking up to him silently, Naruto chopped him in the back of the neck, which caused the thug to fall unconscious. Naruto caught him before he could fall to the ground and placed him against the wall before placing privacy seals so that he couldn't alert the others that something was wrong, and put intense gravity seals on the level of Lee or Guy to keep him from moving. Naruto continued this process 3 more times before he made it to the atrium. Despite his genjutsu, he needed to stick to the shadows and let his shadow clones do their jobs. It would take time to set up, and he could wait. After all, these people's lives were more important than his old brash shoot first ask questions later attitude. While he was waiting, the hinged shadow clone mice were slowly making their way across the room, taking care to avoid the obvious leader and going for the flunkies to take them out quietly so as to perform a surprise takedown while he was busy procuring an escape for his gang. One of the women saw one of the mice and was about to scream when she was surprised by the mouse bringing its little fingers up and forming a sign that told her to shush. Following the mouse's advice, as strange as it was, she stayed quiet. No one witnessed this, except a well-developed girl with white as snow hair with an eye patch over her right eye, who upon seeing this narrowed her remaining eye. She had been about to take care of the robbers with a plan that provided little fuss and very few casualties, but held back to see what would happen if she waited a little longer. Each of the mice followed each flunky and placed them under a genjutsu that convinced them that they heard noises in separate but secluded corners. When they were in position, the 3 mice unhinged and proceeded to knock out each of the thugs and placing them down gently, after which the 3 clones picked up the weapons and transformed into each of the thugs they had knocked out. The transformed trio then stalked up to the leader with the real Naruto going around him. "Well guys, pretty soon we'll all be rolling in dough, for $1 million to just the 4 of us. Of course, after we leave the rest of those losers in the stairwell to be caught while we get away. However, we might need to take a hostage to make sure we're not followed. How about that white-haired broad so we can have some fun? Sure, she has one eye but she still has a nice body, you can't deny that," the man said with no idea that anything was wrong. But when nobody laughed like they usually did, he felt that something weird was going on right then and turned around asking, "Guys, what's going on? Why aren't you laughing?" And started when everyone started laughing, a laugh that sent chills up his spine. "Oh, that was quite the plan, boss," one said in a tone that creeped the leader out. "Yeah, leaving the others behind so they could rot," another said, freaking him out some more. "But there's one little thing that you didn't think about," the last flunky said in a voice that scared the leader even more than the other 2 combined. "Why, yeah? Well, what's that?" he asked, about to lose control and soil himself like a child. All 3 of the transformed clones looked towards one another before pointing at something behind him. "Right behind you," they said in unison, causing the leader to spin around to see Naruto, who had just dropped his genjutsu and pounced like a panther and landing a solid blow to his face, knocking the leader out. The hostages, seeing this man knock out the man who ordered the men who held them hostage around, became restless, hoping he would let them go. The one-eyed, white-haired girl was silently impressed with the methodical way he had subdued the situation, and decided to study him in the future, as he had piqued her interest. Everyone waited for what he would do next. "Get rid of the transformation and gather the other men who are knocked out and pile them up and then tie this one." He indicated the leader with a light kick to the body before him. "And string him up, I'll take care of the rest," he finished. "Yes, sir," the clones said before they unhinged back into copies of the man standing before the hostages. After that, the clones moved off to take care of their assignments, quickly collecting and piling the unconscious thugs up and moving on to string the leader up. When they were done, one walked up to its creator and handed him something which he placed into his coat. "Okay, now that that's been taken care of, release the hostages while I make sure these guys don't escape, and afterwards disperse," he said while the clones nodded in affirmative. Reaching into his coat, he took out 3 shuriken and threw them so that they formed a triangle around the pile of criminals. He then performed several hand seals before declaring, "Raitun Kaminari Shibari, lightning release, thunder binding," creating a triangular prison of transparent blue walls made of lightning chakra. By the time he was finished, the hostages were free and were now openly staring at him. Narrowing his eyes at them, he said in a cold voice, "Well, are you just going to stand there all day or what?" Which snapped the people out of their trance, and they started running towards the exit. All except one white-haired girl. The girl walked up to the man, putting on an air of timidity, all the while studying her hero as it were, with a cold, calculating mind. "Thank you for saving us," she said to him timidly, as she continued to study him, and her eye fell upon the sword he carried. "Who knows what would have happened if things continued?" Naruto knew it was an act but decided to play along. Scratching his head like he used to when he was younger, he looked at her kindly while studying her as well. She had the build and body language of a highly trained combatant and tactician. "No problem, now go on, you don't want to stay here, do you?" he asked. "Of course not, so I'd better get going." She turned to go before she paused and turned around to face Naruto. "My name's Rose, by the way," she told him before running out the door to join the other hostages. He turned to leave when the doors to the building burst open and what resembled a special forces team came in with their sights trained on the blonde hero. Each operative looked around, seeing most of the criminals who had held the people hostage for over 15 minutes piled up and surrounded by crackling, transparent walls. Looking at the blonde in awe, only one voiced what they were all thinking. "Who are you?" Naruto thought about that for a moment. As far as he knew, there was no one he cared about in this place or any records of his existence, so if anybody considered revenge against him, they would have nothing to hurt him with. His old brash self would have screamed his name at the top of his lungs and started bragging about how awesome he was, but now he was a jounin for his village and was a hell of a lot smarter than he used to be. So instead of saying his name, he used his moniker from the bingo book back in the elemental nations. "You people can call me the Shadow Fox," he told them. He snapped his finger, dropping the imprisonment jutsu, and before the team's very eyes vanished into a swirl of blue flames, leaving them all clueless as to where he had gone. On top of a building just across the street, a pillar of blue fire appeared before it dispersed to reveal the Shadow Fox. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the Shadow Fox of Konoha, had been given that nickname after the war due to his trademark jutsu being the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and his being the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Kitsune. Kakashi had been the one to give him that nickname after his battle with Tobi, formerly Obito Uchiha, thinking that he would need a more intimidating moniker than the hero of Konoha. So from that day forward, he became the Shadow Fox, a hero and warrior known throughout the elemental nations who had defeated the greatest threat to the world. He had finished what Hashirama Senju had started with Madara Uchiha by defeating Kabuto and canceling the Edo Tensei, and sealed the Jubi back into the Geto Mazo, which stopped the Eye of the Moon plan that Madara had planned on once he had completed the Jubi and sealed it within himself. Even more recently, he wiped the cursed Uchiha line by killing Sasuke, ensuring he could not do any more damage than he had already caused. Turning his back on the bank, he walked off, reaching into his coat and unsealed what his clone had handed him. What he held was a rolled-up wad of green bill, which he assumed was money due to the numbers. Unrolling the money, he started counting and came up to 4,000 of whatever the currency was, wondering how he was going to make more without stealing from criminals. He then remembered the casinos he had seen all across the city and suddenly remembered one of his goals in life back in Hai no Kuni, Land of Fire, was to one day wipe out entire casinos with his wits, luck, and a sizable amount of money. He never got to do it with the influx of missions after the war, and Tsunade would most likely kill him if she ever found out he did this without her, but that wasn't important at the moment. Was it necessary to bankrupt casinos? No. Would he go ahead and do it anyway just for the heck of it? Oh yes, he would. "I can tell, this will be fun," he said with a smile, some of his old exuberance slipping into his posture. After switching back into his civvies, he walked down the streets when his other, unofficial, moniker came to mind, the Anti-Tsunade of Konoha, he had been called. Walking around, he spotted a rather large casino with a neon pink archway for an entrance. For some reason, it really pissed him off. "First target spotted. Objective, destroy at all costs," he said in a cold voice as he intended to bankrupt the casino with extreme prejudice. Sitting on a sandy inlet on the shore of a lake, Zatanna laid out on a towel. It was one of her better dreams since the death of her father, but she had the sense that her dream self was waiting for something. What that something was answered when Zatanna felt something wrap itself around her waist, and she felt something soft yet firm latch itself onto her neck, adding a pleasurable suction. She moaned. "I was wondering where you were," she said in a sultry voice. For some reason, when she said his name, she heard no sound, leaving her dream lover's identity a secret. "Well, Tana-chan, I couldn't let all this get burned, so I went to get some sunblock," the mystery man told her, rubbing her lower back and shapely ass, and hearing him call her that made her feel like all her problems had disappeared. Anything that made her sad or angry was just gone. Feeling his hand go lower, she noticed that she wasn't wearing anything but didn't feel any embarrassment. She did, however, get hot when she felt something hot and hard poking her ass, causing her to smile and turn over. When she saw her mystery lover, her breath hitched. It was the man she had seen at the strip today, as naked as she, and was staring at her in complete adoration. She smiled seductively before saying in a low voice, "So considerate of me, love, such consideration deserves a reward." And she wrapped her legs around his hips and pulled his face towards her in a scorching kiss. Zatanna gasped as she jolted herself awake. What the hell had that been? Just this morning she had been tired beyond belief, looking for a being from another dimension, and sees one extremely hot guy, and now she's having erotic dreams about doing it outdoors with said guy. However, that dream would give her lots of material to work with in the future. Noticing a slight dampness in her panties, she sighed to herself. She got out of her bed and made her way to her hotel bathroom. She needed a cold shower. A really cold shower. Naruto walked out of another casino, which he had bankrupted, with a satisfied smile on his face. He had done it. He had walked into that first casino and traded all the money he got off of the robbers for things called poker chips and sat down at a table with several strange characters. One was large, wore boots, and had a large hat. The other man wore a slick suit with greased up hair, not a strand out of place. They both had looked at him with predatory grins, thinking he was nothing but a small-time gambler just going off of his clothes. Naruto simply smiled kindly back at them and won the first game. Rounding his success up to beginner's luck, the two other players continued but started to feel the heat when he won 2 more games. Feeling an almost sadistic thrill, he decided to go all in, knowing what would follow. The 2 other men, deciding to take a chance to win their money back, put all their money on the line only to lose it all. After the poker game that he won, the rest of his time was a blur of his time at the slots, roulette, craps, and blackjack. When he was sure he got all of the money he could out of the casino, he went to cash all the money he won but was intercepted by 2 large men who said that they needed a meeting with him out back. He went with them, and when they tried to threaten him in order to get the money their bosses lost on him, he told them it was impossible, kicked their asses, and left them in a dumpster. He went back in and cashed his money, ending up with almost $30 million. Seeing the girl behind him panicking at all the money that was given to him almost made him feel bad for bankrupting the casino, but he gave her $20,000, telling her that it would last her a while before he left the casino. That was 2 hours ago, and he had utterly bankrupted 3 more casinos before showing some grace and goodwill by giving some of the employees a little money and leaving. Yep, he was officially loaded. Naruto 4 casinos zip with the absurd amount of $120 million. After sealing up all of his money, he decided to take a break, so looking around for something to do, he spotted a billboard displaying a beautiful woman with rather large assets held back in a low-cut blouse, high-cut tights, see-through stockings, a long coat, a top hat, and carrying some kind cane. The sign said, "Come one! Come all! Come to see the amazing and beautiful world-class magician, Zatanna at the Circus Casino tonight at 6. Looking down at the watch, he won 2 casinos ago and read that the time was 5:30, so he decided to go. Because this casino offered some form of entertainment, he would spare it a bankrupting, for now. He took a closer look at the woman. If she was half as beautiful as her picture, he wouldn't mind doing some research on her for his books. Yeah, Ika Magical would be a bestseller. A young kunoichi who discovers she has magical powers and she must learn how to control with the help of her teacher, a powerful shinobi who she has always loved. Will they discover the true magic of love? All of a sudden he stopped, before he started beating himself for being a pervert. If he never got to him in life, Jiraiya most certainly got to him after his death, where in his will he had made Naruto the sole proprietor of the perverted book series. Sure, Naruto continued the series but had prided himself on not being as openly perverted as his sensei. Now what did he have? In his head he saw a chibi Jiraiya holding a banner saying, "I finally got him!" Shaking that thought, he walked off trying to find the casino, but his thoughts kept drifting back to that woman. She was a beauty, he would not deny that. Maybe he should ask her to dinner? Wait, hold on, where the hell did that come from? Walking out of her punishment shower, Zatanna looked towards her clock and saw she only had 20 minutes till showtime, so she quickly used magic to change her clothes and teleported to her dressing room in the Circus Casino to prepare. For some reason, she wanted to make this her best performance ever. She didn't know why, but she was determined to make it so. "Zatanna? Oh, you're here," said the stage director. "Yep, and ready to go," she told him, heading up to the stage. Naruto arrived and paid for a ticket for the show and found a seat. At 2 minutes to show time, he started to feel a tingle of excitement that he hadn't felt in years, like he couldn't wait for this show to begin. 2 minutes could not go by fast enough for Naruto. The curtain finally rose, and for Zatanna, it couldn't have come any sooner because the feeling she felt in the dressing room increased the closer show time came. She was more determined now than ever before for this to be the best show she had ever done before. The best start she could come up with was a flashy, flamboyant entrance. Lowering her hat, she said, "Call Fefo Sevid," saying flock of doves backwards, and immediately hundreds of doves flew out of her hat and covered the stage. Sure that she couldn't be, she walked onto the stage and told the doves, "Adnieta." With the command, all of the doves flew towards the hat, and vanishing into it revealed her on the stage. Looking out over the crowd, she caught sight of the golden blonde-haired man who had infested her thoughts all day, and she paused in order to properly drink in his features. The same could be said for Naruto, who was looking in awe of probably the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. At that moment their thoughts were in sync, as they thought the same thing together. She looks better in person. In a dark room, a white-haired girl sat in front of a computer screen watching as the Shadow Fox opened the door to the stairwell, where he created 3 copies of himself which transformed into the 3 mice she had seen in the bank. She watched as he went through the stairwell and systematically taking down each of the criminals who were patrolling there. She noticed that even though he had the sword, he never once reached for it as he took them down one by one and surrounding them with some strange oriental writing before placing a single piece of paper on each before moving on. She had always been taught right from wrong by her father, but he had also taught her that if there was enough money on the table, the line between the two would disappear. Rose Wilson had been taught that anything was a weapon and should be used to kill those who trespassed against her without mercy. To be merciless was the legacy that Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke or the Terminator, left his children, no matter how that legacy had killed his own son or how his own high standards had made him abandon his daughter who had cut out her own eye in an attempt to gain his attention and respect. Rubbing her missing eye, she couldn't help but think that it had all been a waste of time. Her father had disappeared for years, not even bothering to contact her, and suddenly reappeared to conveniently save her from his murderous half-brother, Wade. She thought that he had cared, he had told her she was all he had left, but as soon as she was deemed useless by him, he just left her to die. No matter what, her father could always be considered a mercenary, no allegiance to anybody, even family. After the Justice League had let her go, keeping an eye on her as a sort of probation, she had been traveling trying to find who she truly was. Nowhere she went held any answers. Meditation in China, martial arts in Taiwan, even partying in the Bahamas had told her anything, and she would constantly keep on the move to keep away from her father. If there were rumors he was in China, she would go to England. If she heard he was in England, she would go to America, and so on and so forth. She had just been about to give up on finding any answer and drown her sorrows in booze and gambling, but then he showed up. Shadow Fox swooped in and saved those people she had been with before she could start her plan that could have gotten people killed. She could be better. No, she was better than that, and she would change. She was the Ravager, the only daughter of Deathstroke, and she would separate herself from the shadow her father cast. She would become something else, something better than Slade Wilson. And she knew where to start. How long had it been since the war? A year? A century? He didn't know. All he knew was that because of that insufferable brat, the glorious plan that his master had almost carried out was ruined. The Jubi had been sealed into the statue again, and he had taken his Rinnegan from him. He remembered how he had been near death, and the brat had changed into his full Kyubi state to load up the Baijidama to kill him, and him using the last of his chakra to pull off his kamui for a quick escape. Only instead for the brat to fire that infernal blast of chakra right as he was about to escape, and something happened to his technique. For the longest time he was in the dark, no feeling, no sight, like he was blind, and then he was cold. Not enough to kill him, but enough to preserve his body and keep him alive but dormant, and left barely aware as time passed. With nothing but his memories, he remembered how he had used the brat as a baby as leverage to get a shot at the Uzumaki bitch who held his master's pet. How he cherished the memory of his former sensei's face as was forced to choose between protecting his wife or saving his infant son. The release of the Kyubi and the ensuing battle with his sensei had been one of the best times of his life until he had been defeated and the Kyubi had been sealed once more. From day one the brat had been a problem, from the point where the Kyubi had been sealed inside him, to the point that he had been placed into this hell. He swore that if he got the chance he would do what his master never let him do. He would kill Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Suddenly he felt an energy that was all too familiar to him. It seemed that he may not be close, but that infernal Jinchuriki was there for him to find and kill. His one remaining eye opened, revealing a blood-red eye, with 3 tomos surrounding the pupil. In the Arctic there was an explosion of light and intense heat that came from within the ice. After all the debris had settled, an anomaly occurred where the air seemed to spiral in on itself before a man stepped out with the center of the spiral coming from his eye. The man was tall, wearing a black tattered cloak with decorative red clouds that adorned it, and wore a purple mask with 3 tomo in a circular pattern just like his red eye. Looking around, he found himself standing on a glacier which seemed to have been his prison for however long he had been trapped there. Taking his moment to study his former prison, the man started to turn, seeming to look for something. Then he looked south before he started walking, only to stumble and fall. It seemed that he had been there for a long time for him to not even be able to walk properly. It mattered not though. He picked himself up and continued before he started to run, slowly at first but gaining even more speed and ignoring his screaming body. He ran a few more seconds before he disappeared into a spiral and appeared miles away before repeating the process again, and again, and again. Only one thing was clear: Obito Uchiha was back and he was out for blood. Chapter end. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. Also share this story with your friends. And now it's time for me to go, bye.